Near mint condition, the home of collected edition.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's just the Uncanny Omar here to talk about the latest Folio Society's slipcase edition. We are looking at DC's Superman. So, stay tuned. Now, before going any further, a big thank you to the folks at the Folio Society for sending us a copy of their latest definitive anthology. So what we're looking at here is DC Superman. And last year, I did get to do a overview of the unforgettable stories from Marvel Comics, curated by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom. This one is a little bit different. I mean, both of them have a beautiful slipcase. This one's different because it comes with a unique comic in here. We'll look at that here in a second. But what I was going to say is that it's also different because we're just looking at one character, not all of DC's characters. So let's actually look at the build of the slipcase here. There's the DC Bullet logo. I love the fact that they are using the Bullet logo nowadays. And then, of course, the copyright DC down there. And let's get it out of its slipcase. So the slipcase itself is just black on the inside right there. And, oh man, that is so cool. Superman himself, like the colors they're using, looks like the Ben-Day dots. Then, of course, there's a blue foil up there, the DC logo. And again, that Superman image. The DC logo and the Folio Society, Superman, and nothing on the back. But this is the very unique thing this book comes with. This is a facsimile edition of Superman #1. Not Action Comics, but Superman #1, which is, it is the introduction of Ma and Pa Kent in here and kind of redoing the origin of Superman, which we'll look at here in a little bit. But first, wanted to get this book out so you can see a quick size comparison to a standard size hardcover, which has the trim size of a single issue, but it is a little bit taller, the same length, and of course, compared to the size of an omnibus. So let's look at the actual spines here. There we go. You can just see how much taller the omnibus is compared to this hardcover. And the other thing to note is there is no dust jacket, it's just the art on board. So we are going to crack this book open. I'm going to tell you where to get it. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you there's a link in the description of the video where you can purchase the book. It doesn't show you the retail price, but just like the Marvel's Unforgettable Stories, it is $100 through their website. There is a signed edition as well. And this one, by the way, is curated by none other than Jenette Kahn. And there is a foreword by Marjorie Liu. All right, let's kick it off with the facsimile edition. And it does come in this sleeve. It's a protected sleeve. It's like a thick paper stock there. This has a glossy paper stock. And on the inside, it has like it's not really newsprint. It's not really matte. It has a slick feel to it. So it's not really glossy nor matte or satin. But it does make the artwork really pop out. Interesting that they went with Superman #1. Most of the time it's Action Comics that is collected in stories or collections like this. But this is retelling the origin, or rather updating the origin of Superman. And how the planet Krypton was about to explode. And I think this one is Clark Kent gets a job at the Daily Star, if I'm not mistaken. But you are introduced for the first time to the concept that Krypton blew up. He doesn't come from the future. He comes from a different planet. And you're introduced to his Earth parents, John and Mary Kent. And again, just retelling that origin with that classic artwork right here. And the artwork has not been restored. I'm sure if you're familiar with even in Omni formats, but mainly like the Marvel Masterworks line, it is just a really good high-resolution scan of the original art. And the house ads are all intact in here. This one is 64 pages. And it is a 9.5 by 6 3/4. And yeah, I really like this printed envelope that it comes in. All right, now, the hardcover. So here we have the end sheets. I love that they're using a panel, DC Superman, and selected and introduced by Jenette Kahn, and a forward by Marjorie Liu, and then the facsimile edition, and of course the Folio Society, London. I believe this book was printed in 2025, and it came out in February, if I'm not mistaken. It's still available through the website. This is the contents of the book and where you're going to be able to find them and when they were originally published. So you are looking at stories collected from 1941 right here all the way until 1999. There's a wonderful forward here from Marjorie Liu, and I fell in love with her forward, talking about just the power of Superman and what it means to her and what it meant to her as a kid and just growing up in the age of apocalypse. At first I thought she was talking about the X-Men, and she very well could be, because she has written X-Men before. But I really enjoyed this introduction, or the forward rather. The introduction by Jenette herself talks about the importance of Superman and what he meant and why each of the stories in here were chosen by her. And I thought that was such a treat to read, a little bit behind the scenes, kind of like what Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom did in the Marvel Folio Society. It's that she got to pick and choose the comics, and this is the reasons why. And there's different reasons why, and how true some of these comics are to this day, even though they were written in the 40s. But one thing that she goes on about is this letter from Jerry Siegel to Russell Keaton, pitching the idea of a comic strip for Superman. And if you look at that, 1934, that is long before Action Comics. I thought that was really cool, and the letter and the pitch is included in here. Now, what does this collect? Well, the book itself has 312 pages, and what we have here is the fifth columnist from Action Comics number 36. We also have the mysterious Mr. Mxyzptlk, and I always butcher that name, so I could never defeat him, especially if I had to say it backwards. The girl who didn't believe in Superman from Superman 96. The mysterious Mr. Mxyzptlk is from Superman 30. And the Living Legends of Superman, Chapter 4, from Superman 400. Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, probably one of the greatest Superman comics, at least in my eyes, from Action Comics number 583. Secrets Revealed from Superman Volume 2, number 2. That's the John Byrne era. Love's Labors, Superman Annual number 2. Homeless for the Holidays, The Adventures of Superman 462. That is such an awesome story. That's from 1990. Doomsday from Superman 75. And then Peace on Earth, which is just a masterpiece. My gosh, these choices would have been really difficult for me. So the very first story takes place. It does tell you in the table of contents and also at the very beginning. In 1941, and this is the story pretty much of Lois Lane kind of standing up for herself as a reporter, and it's all about how there's this the Nazi war that's going on with the machine ravaging all over Europe, and Pearl Harbor, just a few months away from the book being published. It talks about the future of democracy and the stake of the future of democracy, and how Ted Allen, one of the characters in here, orders Lois Lane to write a favorable piece on this terrorist activity that is going on, and she refuses. And I thought that was such a cool way to start the series. So there is a lot, oh my gosh, and it's like picking and choosing a lot of the social commentary that was going on at the time. And then you have action stuff in here too, like this little guy, the imp from another dimension, Mr. Mxyzptlk. You know what? I ain't even going to try, because every time I get corrected. And at the time, they even misspelled his name. But anyway, it is all about meeting Superman for the first time, and how Superman just tries to defeat the character in different ways, and finally is able to do it, and tricking him into doing it. This is such a cool story. I don't think I've ever read this one. This is the story from Superman number 96. The Girl Who Didn't Believe in Superman. And this is all how the Daily Planet has a contest for the lovely child, as it's called, who receives $1,000 in prizes, and will also this year get to fly around with Superman and Lois. But the girl who ends up winning it is this young girl named Alice Norton, who's blind. Now, she becomes cynical because of her blindness. So every time that Superman is trying to prove to her that he's real, like, she thinks it's just a hoax. I freaking love this story. I have never read this, so I thought that was such a cool story. I've never read it in a collection, and I assume it's been collected before. You get to see the evils of Lex Luthor right here, and how he is just so scheming and always playing 5 steps ahead of everyone else in a game of chess. So apparently, while in prison, Luthor claims that he has solved the way to fix humanity, and how he has achieved a cure for cancer, all by playing around with this element Z. Now, Superman trusts him. He's like, maybe he's changed his ways. Maybe he's a good guy. And Luthor's like, look, I need you to take me to this space station. I can work there alone. And they kind of become buddy-buddy until the the horrible betrayal. And not only does he betray Superman, but he slowly kills him with kryptonite radiation poisoning and summons his best friends, so Lois Lane and Perry White and Jimmy Olsen, to just watch him slowly die. And the ads are in here, by the way, so it's almost like a facsimile, but only when they were doing ads within the page, not the entire comic book. That one has a really sad ending where, like, Supergirl takes on the role of Superman, and I thought, wait, that didn't really end. What the heck happened? So I guess I was probably surprised as much as anybody else reading it. Oh man, I'm so glad this story was collected. This is the one by Marshall Rogers, Terry Austin, and this is taking place in a possible future, and it is the character of Conrad Gloom, who's like this homeless character who stumbles upon Superman's outfit, and he refuses to obey the system that's telling him to lie down and put the costume away. So they start shooting him, and of course, trying to zap him. They can't zap him because he's wearing the costume. And I think it's so cool that this guy finds the costume, and whether the costume is real or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what the costume stands for. Probably one of my favorite Superman comics. I know I've talked about it before in the past, but this is by Alan Moore, and they got Kurt Swan to come back and do this. But this is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And it's all about this young reporter named Tim Crane, and how he goes and visits Lois Lane. And this is an older Lois Lane, so a lot of time has passed since we last saw Superman. And Lois Lane is there, not by herself, but with her husband and her child. And her husband is not Clark Kent or Superman. It's some other guy. So in here you get to see the last fight of Superman, and how he ended up losing some of his friends, how he lost his best friends, and what ends up leading him to just giving up the costume and eventually just kind of phasing away. Oh man, if you've never read Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, it is so good. Superman 2 is in here, The Secret Revealed. And this another one that shows the evils of Lex Luthor, this time around kidnapping Lana Lang and trying to get Superman to come to him. This is from the ongoing series Superman. Number 2, this is when John Byrne was writing the stories. And it just shows how evil freaking Lex Luthor is. This is from the Superman Annual right here. And it is written and drawn by John Byrne. But this is the reason this was chosen is because this is the story of Maggie Sawyer. And Maggie Sawyer is the first lady in comic books that was in an open relationship with another woman. So it's the first lesbian character in a comic book canonically. And I thought that was... I don't think I knew that until I read the introduction. It was because I think I read this as I was reading other things like Doom Patrol around the same time. And I thought, well, anyway, doesn't matter. Apparently she was. And this is a cool story where Maggie, it's a misunderstanding, right? You have the character Dan Turpin, who almost dies, and he ends up proposing to her. And then the reaction, of course, of when he finds out why she's not just into him, but any men. This is the story of Superman Home for the Holidays. And this is from Uncle Raj, I believe. Roger Stern wrote this? Yeah, Roger Stern, Dan Jurgens. So this is during the Triangle era, maybe? Or no, it predates the Triangle era. Oh, man, this is a heart-wrenching story. Like, it's Superman and Perry White find this lady that's been living inside of this closet at the Daily Planet. And as it turns out, it's not a story about Superman fighting a supervillain, but rather what to do with the homeless situation that was going on. I thought that was a really powerful story. And speaking of powerful, Superman, Doomsday from issue 75. Of course, you're going to put the death of Superman in here. It does not have the fold-out page, though. I will say that. It does have this, and then the way the original omnibus and the second printing were printed. It doesn't have the fold-out. That is the day that a Superman died. And then Peace on Earth, which to me is Paul Dini and Alex Ross masterpiece. This is a freaking amazing story about why Superman is the way that he is, why we look to him for hope, and why we aspire to be better people because of someone like him, and how he can't fix everything, that he isn't a god, that he can't be around everywhere at once. It's a really powerful story, and whenever I'm asked where is a great jumping on point for Superman to get to know the character, this one always comes to mind. Oh man, it's just a beautiful painted comic and a wonderful and powerful story. And then your end sheets. So let's look at the binding and then we'll talk about the build here. 312 pages. It is sewn binding, and that's what the eye looks like. This is printed in a really thick glossy paper stock, but the scans are these high resolution scans. So you can actually see some of the bleed through because these were taken from original comics with some high resolution scans. Not because of the paper stock, but just because the scans themselves were made that way. The covers and the pages are all around this black border, unless it's a double page spread, like you saw in the pages of Superman. They have a lot of splash pages and then the double page spread, and of course, Peace on Earth. Now, this is all curated by Jenette Kahn, who of course was president of DC Comics for many years and probably one of the youngest publishers at DC all the way back from 1976. She pretty much revolutionized DC Comics to where it is today. So it's really cool to see her just pick and choose the stories and why she chose the stories and how relevant and important someone like Superman still is to this day. And that, as they say, is that. Again, I have left a link in the description of the video where you can purchase this slipcase edition. And that was the content and page count and of course build of this slipcase edition. In the comments down below, let me know if you picked this up, if you picked up the Marvel slipcase edition, the Unforgettable Stories. I would love to know what your Superman story you would have added to the mix would have been. I know I've got a couple that I would love to have seen in a collection, but it's just really cool that the Folio Society is doing things like this with either writers, editors, or sometimes publishers, or even movie stars. I think it's really cool that they're doing that. They're picking and choosing what stories to put into a perfect collection. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.